My son said my father-in-law is more of a father than you at Christmas. So I sold the house and Christmas was supposed to be about family. But when my own son said his father-in-law mattered more than me, something inside me broke forever. Welcome back, my wonderful family and friends. If you're tuned in and ready to dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll be bringing you another exciting story you definitely don't want to miss. So, let's get started. Desmond loved Christmas. Every year, he decorated the house with meticulous care, glittering lights along the eaves, the smell of pine and cinnamon in every room, stockings hung with names embroidered in red and green. He imagined his son's laughter, the warmth of his wife beside him, the soft glow of a fireplace illuminating a perfect family. He had worked tirelessly to give them this life, long hours, extra shifts, everything to provide comfort and stability. That year, the tree stood taller than ever, each ornament a memory of holidays past. Desmond's son, little Ethan, ran around, untangling strings of lights with the giddy excitement only a 7-year-old could summon. Desmond watched, heart full, and felt a rare, fleeting sense of peace. Then, the moment arrived. Desmond's father-in-law, Gerald, arrived with a booming laugh and an armful of gifts. His presence was magnetic. He moved through the house effortlessly, commanding attention without trying, sharing jokes that had everyone in stitches. Ethan ran into his arms immediately, hugging him tightly. Desmond's chest tightened, but he tried to smile. Then came the words that cut him deeper than he could have imagined. "Grandpa's more of a father than you are, Dad." Desmond froze. His coffee cup trembled in his hand, the liquid sloshing onto the floor unnoticed. The room seemed to slow. Every light twinkled like mocking eyes. Ethan's small voice repeated the phrase, innocent and unyielding. Desmond's wife looked away, biting her lip, unsure whether to intervene. Gerald chuckled lightly, oblivious, or perhaps delighted, at the destruction his charm had wrought. Desmond wanted to scream, to cry, to disappear, but all he could do was stare. The wound wasn't just in pride, it was in his heart. Every effort, every sacrifice, every lonely night spent working to secure their future, it all felt invisible now. His son's words weren't just a betrayal from a child, they were a verdict on his life, a judgment he wasn't prepared to accept. By the time Christmas dinner ended, Desmond had already begun to plan, not revenge yet, not outwardly, but a reckoning. He went to bed that night staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, hearing the laughter and warmth he had lost echoing in the house. Something inside him had shifted. The comfortable world he had built had been shattered by a child's casual truth. He didn't know what he would do, only that he could no longer remain passive. The house that had once been a sanctuary now felt like a gilded cage, every ornament a reminder of his humiliation, every light a spotlight on his failure. He whispered to the darkness, "If they think they can belittle me and escape consequence, they're wrong." Christmas morning left Desmond hollow, the festive magic replaced with a cold, simmering determination. This was no longer about holiday cheer. This was about justice.
My son said my father-in-law is more of a father than you at Christmas. So I sold the house, and on Christmas Eve, my son looked me in the eyes and said, "He's more of a father than you'll ever be." That night, I didn't argue. I just packed a box and made a choice. Snow drifted lazily past the window, gathering in soft piles along the porch Daniel once built with his own hands. The lights flickered, some broken, some still fighting to glow. The house was quiet, too quiet for Christmas Eve. A half-decorated tree stood in the corner, missing its top star. He hadn't bothered to finish. What was the point when the person he used to decorate it for hadn't visited in years? Daniel sat at the table, an untouched cup of cocoa cooling beside him. The television murmured with old holiday reruns, laughter canned and distant. Every sound seemed to mock him, the joy that belonged to everyone else but him. He stared at an old photo on the mantel. Mark, no older than 6, sitting on his shoulders as they hung the star together. His ex-wife, Laura, had taken the picture. Daniel could still hear the sound of her laughter that day, the way she'd teased him for always trying to fix things that weren't broken. That was his curse. Fixing, working, providing, and in doing so, losing. Welcome to the ultimate home for jaw-dropping revenge stories that will leave you on the edge of your seat. From betrayal and heartbreak to cunning payback and ultimate justice, we bring you real life and fictional tales that hit hard and linger in your mind. Subscribe now and join our family of thrill seekers. Don't miss a single twist, turn, or shocking moment. Hit the bell icon and get ready for stories that satisfy your need for revenge, one story at a time. The phone buzzed. A message from Mark. Coming over tomorrow. Emily wants to do dinner at yours first. Then we'll head to the in-laws. No emojis. No words. Just a courtesy. Daniel smiled bitterly, typing, "That's fine, son." He hesitated before pressing send. Should he add, "Can't wait to see you"? No, it would sound needy, and Daniel couldn't bear to sound needy. Not with his own son. Across town, the hum of laughter filled Mark's in-laws' house. The table groaned with roast turkey, casseroles, and homemade pies. Mark's wife, Emily, kissed his cheek as her father poured him a drink. To family, her father said warmly, clinking glasses. Mark smiled, genuinely smiled, and for a fleeting moment he felt something that had been missing for years, belonging. He watched Emily's father, Frank, toss his arm around his wife's shoulders, humming carols off-key. The man was effortless, kind, present. Everything Daniel had never been. When Emily leaned close and whispered, "My dad really likes you, you know," Mark laughed, but something tightened in his chest. He wanted to believe that meant he was part of something whole, something healed. Still, when she mentioned, "We'll visit your dad tomorrow," it'll mean a lot to him. Mark hesitated before answering. "Yeah, sure. It's Christmas, right?" Back in his lonely house, Daniel walked the hallway, brushing his hand against the walls he once painted while Mark played nearby. Each mark, each nail hole, each faded patch of color held a memory. A lifetime's worth of "I tried." At the kitchen counter, he stared at a small wooden box, his savings tied with a rubber band. He had planned to use it to fix the leaky roof come spring. Now, he thought, maybe it didn't matter. For the first time in years, Daniel considered something unthinkable, letting go of the house, the one he'd worked 3 decades to keep. But that thought, that small, cold thought, flickered quietly and settled somewhere deep. It wasn't a decision yet, only the seed of one. That night, he turned off the lights, letting the trees' soft glow fill the dark. "Maybe tomorrow will be different," he whispered. Outside, snow kept falling, indifferent to the loneliness inside. What would you do if someone you loved said something that broke you on Christmas? Would you fight back or walk away in silence? Tell me in the comments below. The morning light crept through the blinds, pale and cold. Daniel woke early, not out of excitement, but habit. He brewed coffee, the smell filling the quiet kitchen, and set out the table with his best, though mismatched, plates. He even placed the old angel centerpiece Laura used to love. It had a broken wing now, but he couldn't bring himself to throw it away. He looked at the clock. 11:07. They'd said noon. He tried not to watch the hands move. By 12:45, when the knock finally came, he exhaled so deeply it almost sounded like a sigh of relief. "Dad." Mark said flatly as the door opened. Behind him, Emily smiled politely, holding a tray of cookies wrapped in gold foil. Daniel's heart lifted a little. "You came," he said, stepping aside. "Of course," Mark replied, eyes scanning the house as though it were strangers. "Wouldn't miss Christmas." The silence that followed was the kind that hummed, thick, uncomfortable. Daniel motioned them to sit. "I made stew. It's nothing fancy, but it smells good," Emily said kindly, sitting beside her husband. They ate in quiet bites, the only sound the clink of spoons against bowls. Daniel tried small talk, the weather, work, the snowstorm coming in. Each word seemed to dissolve before reaching his son. "So," Daniel finally said, forcing a smile, "how's your job at the firm, Mark?" "Fiend. And your in-laws? They treating you all right?" Mark's lips twitched. "Yeah, they're great. Always there for us." Something in his tone, light but sharp, hit Daniel like frost. Emily sensed it too. "Mark," she warned softly, but Mark kept going. "Frank's been helping me out a lot lately. He's like family, you know? Always ready to lend a hand, show up when needed." Daniel's hand tightened around his fork. "That's good. You sound like a good man." "He is," Mark said, eyes lifting to meet his father's. "Honestly, he's more of a father than you ever were." The room went silent. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. Emily gasped. "Mark," but it was too late. Daniel didn't flinch, didn't yell. His jaw tightened, eyes steady but hollow. For a moment, he looked like stone, still, gray, unbreakable. Then, in the smallest motion, his shoulders slumped. The spoon clattered softly against the bowl. "I see," he said quietly. "Well, I'm glad you have someone like him." The words were calm, but beneath them ran a current of something sharp. Regret, sorrow, pride, all tangled together. Mark opened his mouth to speak, maybe to take it back, but Daniel stood. "Excuse me," he murmured, walking to the sink. He washed his bowl slowly, carefully, as if the ritual could keep him from falling apart. The water hissed softly. His hands trembled once, but he hid it by gripping the edge of the counter. Behind him, Emily whispered, "Mark, that was cruel. I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," she said. Daniel turned back with a faint smile. "Don't fight. It's Christmas. You should go before the snow gets worse." Emily hesitated. "Daniel, please." But he was already walking toward the hallway. "I'm fine," he said. Truly. When the door closed behind them, the silence roared back, heavier, louder, endless. He sat again at the table, staring at the untouched stew across from him. Then his gaze drifted to the photograph on the mantel, the one of young Mark on his shoulders, both of them laughing. His throat tightened. He stood, walked to the window, and whispered, "Maybe he's right." Outside, snow began to fall harder, covering the garden, the porch, the life he'd built. Inside, Daniel finally allowed a single tear to fall. If someone said something that shattered you, would you hold it inside like Daniel, or speak your truth? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious how you'd handle it. The day after Christmas, the world seemed muted. Gray sky, gray snow, gray heart. Daniel stood by the window, watching his footprints from the night before slowly disappear under a new layer of frost. It was strange how easily the world could erase you if you stood still long enough. He hadn't slept. His body was exhausted, but his mind wouldn't rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard Mark's voice again. "He's more of a father than you ever were." He thought he'd gotten used to loneliness, but hearing those words from his only son had reopened something he'd buried years ago. That small, tender hope that maybe one day they'd be close again. He reached for his phone more than once that morning. His thumb hovered over Mark's name. But what would he even say? You hurt me? You're wrong? No. He'd said enough by saying nothing. Across town, Mark sat on the couch at his in-laws' house, the air thick with the smell of pine and cinnamon. Emily was quiet beside him, scrolling her phone, but he could feel her disapproval in every sigh. He hated that look, the one that told him she saw through him. You should call your dad, she finally said. Mark didn't look up. For what? To apologize for telling the truth. She turned to face him. You didn't tell the truth. You threw your pain at him. He laughed dryly. He's fine. He doesn't care. He never does. Doesn't care? She repeated softly. Mark, he was alone on Christmas, waiting for you. Do you even hear yourself? He pressed his palms to his eyes. The image of his father's face, still, expressionless, flashed through his mind. That quiet dignity wasn't indifference. It was something else. Something worse. Regret. Emily's hand rested on his arm. You're angry at him for not being the father you wanted, but you're punishing him for not knowing how. He didn't respond. The truth of it stung too much. That evening, Daniel shoveled the driveway, the wind biting at his face. Every scrape of metal against ice echoed in the emptiness around him. He could hear Laura's voice in his head, the last Christmas before she left. Daniel, he doesn't need a provider. He needs a father. And Daniel, too proud then, had said, when he's grown, he'll understand. But now that he was grown, all Daniel could see was distance and his own reflection in it. He paused, leaning on the shovel, staring at the for sale sign he'd placed at the corner of the yard months ago, but never taken down. He'd told himself it was just in case. Now, for the first time, he wondered if it wasn't. He whispered into the cold air, maybe it's time. Mark sat in his car that same night, parked outside his father's street. He'd driven there without thinking, the route still familiar even after years of absence. He saw the dim light through the curtains, his father moving slowly through the house. His chest tightened. He thought of knocking, of saying I didn't mean it, of just being there. But instead, he started the engine. The car's headlights swept over the for sale sign as he drove off. He didn't even notice it. That night, Daniel stood by the window again, watching the snow blur everything beyond the glass, the road, the trees, the world. For the first time in decades, he admitted to himself, I don't know how to fix this. Have you ever held back an apology because pride got in the way? Be honest. Drop a or in the comments depending on which side you've been on. The snowstorm came heavier than the news had predicted, a thick, blinding curtain that swallowed the small town whole. Roads closed. Power lines froze. The world slowed down to a hush. Daniel sat by the fireplace, wrapped in an old blanket, reading by candlelight. The silence was companionable now, not friendly, but familiar. It was the kind of quiet that demanded surrender. He thought about calling Mark again, but dismissed it. What was left to say that hadn't already been broken? Then a knock came, faint but distinct. 3 slow raps. Daniel frowned. No one visited him anymore, especially not in this weather. He opened the door and froze. Mark stood there, coat dusted white, face red from the wind. Power's out at our place, he said, his voice hoarse. Emily's with her parents. Roads are shut. I didn't know where else to go. Daniel's first instinct was shock. His second was a strange, reluctant warmth. You could have stayed there. I didn't want to, Mark said, looking away. I figured you might need help if the storm got worse. There it was, the unspoken olive branch wrapped in practicality. Typical of them both. Daniel nodded toward the living room. Come in before you freeze to death." For the first hour, they moved around each other like strangers sharing a hotel room. Mark gathered firewood. Daniel made tea. They spoke only when necessary. When Daniel handed him a mug, their fingers brushed briefly, a tiny, human reminder that they were still father and son, even under the rubble of years. Mark sat near the fire, staring into the flames. "It's been a while since the power went out like this," he said finally. Daniel half smiled. "Last time, you were 10. We built a fort out of blankets and roasted marshmallows on that very fire." Mark's expression softened. "I remember that. You burned one so bad Mom said the whole house smelled like smoke for a week." They both chuckled quietly, and for the first time in years, the sound didn't feel forced. The silence that followed wasn't awkward anymore. It was fragile, tentative, like new ice forming on a thawing river. Later, as the fire dimmed, Mark noticed something on the coffee table, a stack of papers held down by a pen. "Is that?" he asked, frowning. "Dad, are you selling the house?" Daniel hesitated. His gaze stayed on the flickering flames. "I've been thinking about it." "Why now?" He shrugged. "It's too big for one person. Too full of ghosts." Mark's stomach turned. He didn't know why the thought of this place, his childhood, his memories, belonging to someone else hurt so much. But he covered it with a scoff. "Guess you really are done with the past." Huh. Daniel didn't respond. He only said, quietly, "The past seems to have been done with me first." That silence returned, heavier now, laced with everything they didn't say. Hours passed. The storm howled. The two men sat in flickering orange light, neither willing to sleep. Mark wanted to speak, to ask why his father worked so hard, why he never said "I love you," why he'd let them grow so far apart. Daniel wanted to speak too, to say he'd done his best, to ask for forgiveness without having to say the words. But neither of them did. Not yet. Sometimes it takes a night trapped by snow to realize how cold silence can truly be. The storm carried through the night, but by dawn, the wind had quieted to a whisper. The world outside was buried beneath white stillness, untouched and fragile. Mark woke on the couch, wrapped in an old blanket that smelled faintly of pine and smoke. Across the room, Daniel sat by the window, already awake, a cup of coffee steaming in his hands. "You never sleep, do you?" Mark asked, voice rough from the dry air. Daniel gave a faint smile. "Old habits. Coffee's on if you want some." Mark rose, stretching, the floor creaking underfoot. He poured himself a cup, noticing how Daniel's hands trembled slightly when he reached for the newspaper. It was subtle, but it didn't escape him. He'd never noticed before how much smaller his father seemed now. Not in size, but in weight. Like life had been chiseling him down piece by piece. When Daniel went out to clear the porch, Mark wandered through the house. Every wall held pieces of their story. Framed photos, dusty books, the faint smell of sawdust from his father's old workshop. He paused by a small chest half-tucked beneath the staircase. He remembered it vaguely, his mother's memory box. He knelt, curiosity tugging harder than hesitation, and opened it. Inside were old letters, some yellowed with age. At the top of the stack was one addressed in Daniel's handwriting. "To Mark, for when you're older." Mark's breath caught. He unfolded it carefully, the paper crackling like old leaves. "Son, I know I miss a lot of moments. Birthdays, games, bedtimes. I tell myself it's because I'm building a better life for you. But the truth is, I don't know how to be the father you need and still survive the man I've been taught to be. Your mother says you'll hate me someday. Maybe she's right. But I hope one day you'll understand that every hour I worked was for you, not instead of you. If I never learn to say it out loud, know this: I love you, even when I don't know how to show it." Mark's vision blurred. He had to sit down. His chest felt too tight for air. All this time, he had believed his father simply didn't care, but this letter, hidden away, told a different story. Daniel had tried, just not in the way Mark had needed. He heard the back door creak open and hurriedly wiped his eyes. Daniel entered, dusting snow off his shoulders. "You found the box," Daniel said softly. Mark froze. I didn't mean." "It's all right," Daniel interrupted gently. "I kept those because I didn't know how to give them to you." The air between them was thick with everything that hadn't been said in decades. "Why didn't you ever send it?" Mark asked finally. Daniel stared at the floor. "Because by the time I finished writing it, you already stopped looking for me." The words landed heavy. Mark set the letter down, voice trembling. "You could have tried harder." Daniel nodded. "I could have." The honesty in his tone disarmed Mark more than any apology ever could. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire popped softly, as though marking the fragile peace forming between them. Mark turned toward the window, watching sunlight reflect off the snow. "I didn't know," he whispered. Daniel's voice came quieter still. "You weren't supposed to. You were just supposed to be happy." And for the first time in years, Mark didn't see a distant, cold man. He saw his father, flawed, afraid, and still trying to love him the only way he knew how. That afternoon, sunlight poured through the window, turning the frost on the panes into glimmering lace. For the first time in a long time, Daniel's house didn't feel heavy. It felt alive. The smell of coffee, the crackle of firewood, the faint sound of laughter, things that had once been normal but now felt like miracles. Mark sat at the kitchen table, fiddling with an old Christmas ornament, a wooden reindeer missing one antler. "You kept this thing?" he asked with a small smile. Daniel glanced over from his stove. "You made it in second grade. Burned half your finger with a glue gun, remember?" Mark laughed, a low, genuine sound. "I remember Mom freaking out more than I did." "Yeah," Daniel said softly. "She had a way of making every scrape sound like a tragedy." They shared a look, not filled with blame this time, but memory. The kind that hurt a little, but in a good way. After lunch, Daniel surprised Mark by pulling an old guitar from the corner of the living room. "You still play?" Mark asked, raising an eyebrow. "Not much," Daniel admitted. "But your mom loved when I did. Said it made the house feel like a home." He strummed a few chords, rusty, uneven but familiar. Mark leaned back, listening. For a moment, he was 12 again, sitting cross-legged by the fire while his dad sang off-key Christmas songs. He remembered pretending to roll his eyes back then, but secretly, those nights had been his favorite. When Daniel stopped playing, Mark said quietly, "You know, I used to think you didn't care about any of this, that you just wanted to work to be away." Daniel looked down at the strings. "I thought the same thing about you, that you didn't need me anymore. Guess we were both wrong." The air went still, not tense but tender. Both men smiled awkwardly, like strangers learning a new language. They spent the next hour sorting through old boxes in the attic, holiday decorations, school projects, faded Polaroids. Mark found one of himself in a tiny suit at his high school graduation. Daniel had his arm around him in the photo, smiling proudly. "I forgot you came that day," Mark said, voice soft. "I was there," Daniel replied. "Sat in the back. You looked nervous." "I was. I thought you wouldn't show." "I almost didn't," Daniel admitted. "But your mom called. Said if I didn't, you'd think I'd stopped caring." Mark nodded slowly, emotions pressing behind his ribs. Guess she was right. For a few seconds, they stood there, surrounded by dusty sunlight and quiet truth. Then Daniel chuckled, trying to lighten the air. You still eat half the cookie dough before baking? Mark smirked. Always. Some traditions never die. They laughed again, that rare, full-bodied laughter that shakes the cold out of the room. That night, the storm had passed, leaving a deep calm outside. Daniel poured them both a drink. Whiskey, the expensive kind he'd been saving for a special moment. He lifted his glass. To second chances, he said. Mark clinked his glass against his father's. To not wasting them this time. For the first time in decades, Daniel looked at his son and didn't see the boy who left. He saw the man who came back. The warmth between them wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was enough. Morning light spilled across the kitchen table, golden and deceptive, as if it could erase what came next. Mark was pouring coffee when he noticed the folded paper tucked beneath the stack of sale documents. It wasn't the old letter this time. It was a check. His name on it. The amount made his breath hitch. "Dad, what's this?" he asked, holding it up. Daniel looked up from his toast, calm, too calm. "Just something to help you and Emily get ahead." Mark's pulse quickened. "You sold the house, didn't you?" Daniel hesitated only a second. "An offer came in last night. I accepted." Mark blinked. "Wait, you're serious? This place, our home, you're just giving it away?" Daniel set his cup down, voice measured. "I told you it was too big for one person. Besides, you could use a fresh start." Mark's anger rose fast and hot. "So you sell it behind my back? After everything we talked about yesterday? After we—" He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "I should have known this was temporary. You always find a way to walk away." Daniel flinched but stayed silent. The calmness in his face made it worse. Mark slammed the check onto the table. "You think money fixes everything, don't you? That's all you've ever done. Throw cash at a problem and call it love." Daniel's voice cracked, the first time Mark had heard it tremble in years. "That money isn't for me. It's for you. I found out about your debts, Mark." Mark froze. "You what?" "I wasn't spying," Daniel said quickly. "Emily mentioned it once, months ago. I wanted to help before it got worse." Mark's face flushed, shame, pride, humiliation blending into something ugly. "So you pity me now?" "No," Daniel said softly. "I love you." The words hung in the air like glass about to shatter. Mark laughed bitterly. Funny time starts saying it. He grabbed his coat. "Keep your money, Dad. Keep your house. You've already sold everything else that mattered." He was at the door before Daniel could respond. The cold wind burst in as he left, scattering papers across the floor. Hours later, Daniel sat on the couch, the house darker than it had felt all winter. The check still lay where Mark had thrown it, edges damp from spilled coffee. He picked it up carefully, folding it once, twice, as if doing so could fold back time itself. He whispered to the empty room, "I was trying to give you something I never had, a way out." But the room, faithful as ever, gave no answer. Mark drove aimlessly through the snow-slushed streets. His chest burned with guilt, but pride kept his hands locked on the steering wheel. The letter he'd read the day before flashed in his mind, the one that said, "I love you, even when I don't know how to show it." Now his father had said the same words out loud, and he'd walked away. He hit the steering wheel once hard. "Why can't we just get it right?" he muttered. Outside, snow started again, thin, uncertain flakes swirling like apologies that couldn't find a place to land. That night, two men sat miles apart, both staring at the same winter sky, each believing they'd just lost the only chance they had left. The morning after the last heated argument, Daniel sits alone in the now empty living room. The walls are bare. The scent of fresh paint and cold wood hangs in the air. The house he had nurtured, fought for, and lived in for decades is no longer his. The keyring sits on the counter like a silent confession. For Daniel, selling the house is not revenge. It is an act of love he hopes his son will one day understand. Quietly, he packs a small suitcase, leaving behind photos of birthdays, Christmases, and family vacations. Each item he touches carries memory and weight. Yet he lets them go, whispering apologies into the empty air. Meanwhile, Mark arrives, intending to confront his father one last time. He storms through the front door, half expecting to find Daniel waiting with the same stern face that had haunted him. Instead, the house is eerily silent, stripped of the life he had known. Confusion and panic knot in his chest. On the counter, he sees the note left in Daniel's precise, careful handwriting. "Mark, I sold the house not out of spite, but to free you from debts you didn't even ask me to cover. I wanted to help without pride getting in the way. I hope one day you can see my love has always been yours, even when I failed to show it." Dad. Mark's hands shake as he reads the words. The weight of guilt crashes down on him, heavier than the snow piling outside. Every arrogant defense, every hurtful word he had spoken at Christmas, now feels unbearably small. He realizes the house wasn't just walls. It was a symbol of his father's love, sacrificed quietly, silently, for him. Mark races to the train station, heart hammering, and spots Daniel standing by the tracks, suitcase in hand, coat collar pulled high against the winter wind. Snowflakes drift lazily around him, turning the platform into a muted world of white and gray. Daniel looks tired, resigned, but there is a quiet dignity in his stance. A man who has made the hardest choice for love rather than pride. Mark calls out, voice breaking, "Dad, wait. I understand now. I'm sorry. I've been blind." Daniel turns slowly, eyes misted with tears he had held for years. For a long moment, they simply look at each other, the silence heavy but full of unspoken forgiveness. Then, with a trembling exhale, they step into each other's arms, the snow swirling around them like the world itself pausing to witness the reconciliation. In that embrace, both men feel the burden of years lift. Neither words nor wealth matter anymore. Only presence, only love. The act closes with Daniel and Mark standing together on the platform, the train behind them silent, the path ahead uncertain but shared. The house may be gone, but the connection and the possibility of rebuilding is finally alive. The rented home was modest, far from the grandeur of the old family house. Its walls were plain, its floors unpolished, and the Christmas tree was small and slightly crooked. Yet, for Daniel and Mark, it felt warmer than any mansion ever could. The fire crackled in the small hearth, filling the room with soft golden light, casting gentle shadows that danced across their faces. Mark moved carefully, placing the ornaments they had retrieved from the old house onto the little tree. Each one was a memory, a chipped angel, a faded snow globe, a handmade ornament from a long-ago school project. With each placement, the tension in his shoulders eased. He glanced at his father, whose hands, now unburdened from years of stoic pride, were finally relaxed. "I can't believe you sold the house for me," Mark whispered, voice thick with emotion. "I didn't understand until now." Daniel smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and sorrow in his eyes. I didn't want you to see it as sacrifice. I just wanted you to be free and safe. I never stopped loving you, Mark, even when I failed at showing it. Mark stepped closer, his own eyes glistening. I've wasted so many years being angry, holding grudges over things I never really knew. He paused, then added softly, "Can you ever forgive me?" Daniel's hands rested on his son's shoulders. "I've always forgiven you. I was just waiting for you to forgive yourself." For the first time in decades, they laughed together, not awkwardly, not out of obligation, but freely, the sound rich and warm, echoing through the small house. The tension that had clung to their relationship like a shadow finally lifted. That evening, they shared a simple Christmas meal. There was no lavish spread, no ornate decorations, just Daniel, Mark, and a few close neighbors they had invited along. Yet, the air was filled with joy, conversation, and connection. Mark's wife watched quietly, smiling, seeing the father and son who had once been strangers now genuinely present for each other. Later, as snow fell gently outside, Mark helped Daniel hang the final ornament on the tree, a small silver star representing hope, love, and a second chance. Daniel looked at it, then at his son, and for the first time in years, he felt truly seen. Later, as snow fell gently outside, Mark helped Daniel hang the final ornament on the tree, a small silver star representing hope, love, and a second chance. Daniel looked at it, then at his son, and for the first time in years, he felt truly seen. The night ended with them sitting together by the fire, talking about everything and nothing, the weight of unspoken regrets finally replaced by understanding and belonging. Outside, the world continued on, indifferent to their reconciliation, but inside, they had found something infinitely more precious: each other. The story closes with a quiet thought. Homes can be sold, possessions can fade, and years may be lost, but the heart's capacity for forgiveness, love, and redemption remains eternal. Thank you so much for watching my story all the way to the end. Your support means everything. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.